President Buhari's budget appropriation for 2023, which was presented to the legislature last Friday, received knocks from economists, analysts, and commentators. The exit budget for the Buhari's administration revealed that the country's fiscal imbalance is yet to run its course, even as the country prepares for a major political transition in the first quarter of next year. You're chatting with me on this and a few other headlines is a senior economist at SPM Professionals, Paul Alaje. Paul, thank you very much for coming. It's a public holiday, so we appreciate your making the time to come in for this conversation tonight. What are your thoughts looking at the numbers presented last Friday at the National Assembly by Mr. President?
We have a lot to worry about in 2023. As economists, we have to tell the people the truth.
Was the budget a true reflection of the state of things?
Yes, it reflects, but you are not going to achieve what you put, what government have stated. And I can explain to you. First of all, the budget reflects the true state because for every 2 naira government we spend, government is saying, I'm going to borrow 1. For every time the president and all officials fly a jet, 50% of the cost of traveling, including Ester code, is borrowed. 50% is what we may generate. That is worrisome, not so. So it's a true reflection that the milk and honey that we were told when we were young, there's a country that flows with milk and honey. The milk seems to be drying up. Why? Because of the entire budget. 20 trillion, we're expecting less than 2 trillion to come from oil. But that's the milk. That's the milk. And what your correspondent yesterday, where she had traveled to cover what is happening in the Niger Delta region.
The oil theft.
Oil theft. Only 700 barrels as against 700,000, I beg your pardon, as against 1.8 that was budgeted for in 2022.
According to OPEC production quota.
Yes. So
for next year, it's 1.6 million barrels.
1.6, but for this year that we have, it was 1.8.
Yes.
Now we are doing less than half. Half should have been 900. We are doing less than half in production.
Less than 50%.
Less than 50%. So when you say, is it the true reflection? I think it's true, but it's no longer a call for sober reflection. It's a reality that is facing us. You know why? We have 6 trillion naira budgeted for, 50% of which will be borrowed, according to the budget, is what we will spend on to play employees of government, the labor force.
Yes.
That's on one hand. Secondly, 3 trillion naira half-year subsidy service. Subsidy payments. We have debt service. So we are going to borrow 50% of debt service, then generate money to service for debt service. You see, we are now gradually getting to a state of confusion. And if you read, I remember early in the year.
I'm trying to understand it as well, because the whole accounting process is becoming a little bit very confusing to me to understand the whole process.
You see,
that's why I brought you in. We brought you in here.
Earlier in the year, I spoke
plug
with you.
This deficit, yes.
Yes. Can you repeat the question? Let me be sure I heard you very correctly.
I'm trying to find out how we will plug this deficit and how we stop borrowing overlay that we're beginning to borrow to pay debt, and the level of borrowing is getting higher and debt is getting higher, while revenue is
getting smaller.
Yes, it's getting a whole lot smaller.
Yeah, the only way is for us to become more purposeful. The revenues are there. I was with the state's revenue man, the head of revenue in the states, in the southwest, not Lagos State, by the way. And we were presenting and showed the state how they can add 4 trillion naira to the revenue. The head of Board of Internal Revenue jumped at it. They said, we have not been able to get revenue from this area. But the essay to the governor of that state said, don't worry, we know the people, we will talk to them, they will pay us. As I talk to you today, at least 6 months after, not 1 naira addition has gone to the covers of that state. It is a reflection of those that politicians directly appointed to help. But because of personal aggrandizement.
So are we having issues with the FRS? Are we having issues with government agencies that expect to bring in revenue that will help us balance this imbalance?
If you check what FRS has done in the last 8 years, there has been improvement. But when you look at those improvements, it's a function of exchange rate. Because when we have more, when you convert it to dollar terms, see, more people are becoming poorer. That's the truth. IMF, World Bank, UNDP, they all attest to it. Businesses are suffering. We are losing our best. We are losing talents. People are leaving the country. So how do you get revenue? Even though we see some surge, we see a surge from remittance back home. It shows talent are going. But if the people were here, what would have happened to our economy domestically, locally? Huge growth. But we are losing them. We are losing them because we don't have capacity to retain them today.
We need to do something very quickly, and the administration is saying, look, we're going to do privatization and we'll be able to bring in some revenue to plug this deficit for 2023. We're already in October. There's election in the first quarter. Handing over will be the end of May. How feasible is that?
Well, I think the government has little time to do that, because from now till February, to March, the song will be hearing all over is politics. So you are saying that effectively April, May, government wants to privatize. There is several processes for us to follow.
We've been talking about privatization. This administration, the Buhari's administration, has been talking about privatization for so long. It hasn't really been done.
Yes.
So that's my question, whether we can really believe that the government can do it right now to help budget 2023 when they had 2022, they had 2021, they had 2020.
Well, what should have built this government would have been privatization. And for some enterprises, it might not be to completely sell them. It could be to retain a few shares so that you can still retain your earnings after selling. But I must also warn that we don't make mistake that we made with power. Government said it wants to privatize, and this is the main reason why you have this challenge with power today. All the monies government collected from privatizing power were not spent, were not invested in power sector. They were used to pay staff of the defunct PHCN. You know what? Most of those staff came back and worked with the current discourse. Meanwhile, they've been paid off. So money started than going back as investment, because you still have shares. Government divested significant proportion of their shares,
yes,
gave it to their staff, they left, they were called back. But look at the power. Because the monies those people were bringing were supposed to be invested in power, but they were not invested. The monies were paid to government, who then paid the staff. Then we have the crisis.
So what, in your opinion, what will be the biggest macroeconomic challenge for the new administration, whoever gets on board next year, a continuity of the present administration in another helmsman, or someone completely new on the driver's seat?
Two biggest challenge. You are going to have issues with stability. And stability, I mean price stability, which is inflation.
Yes.
And you are also going to, the under stability, you see have exchange rates, which is FX stability. Stability is a big challenge. Subsidy we pay today is not just subsidy. We are also paying for exchange rates. Devaluation of Naira. Because if Naira were to be what it was when we said we were going to take Naira off fixed rate to floating rate in 2017 at 250, if that were to be the exchange rate today, I tell you, there will be no subsidy at all. But because at official rate, from what they even approved in the budget, 435, almost times 2 of what it was in 2017. So anybody coming must find a way to figure that out. 2 is the real sector. And the real sector, we talk about production, the growth. How do you truly grow the real sector, not just GDP growth rate? The real sector, which will include production. How do we encourage more people in manufacturing such that we manufacture and export? We cannot produce all that we consume. We can still import, but what are the things we are importing? Are they things that are tied to our lives? Can we have substitute for them? In terms of economy, you must put these two as macro variables together and grow them. But all of this may not be achievable if you don't solve security challenges. So everybody coming now is not going to be an enviable position. I see people march. It's okay to march. But beyond your marches, can you tell us how you will solve the critical macroeconomic challenges?
How long will it take us to resolve insecurity and begin to put boots on the ground to produce food, job, agro-industries, and everything else? And keep asking, the bad guys, the criminal elements are just going to pack up and go home.
The day we are willing to remove sentiments in our country, sentiment is what has ravaged our mind. When you talk about the people that are criticizing, or people that are holding us down in terms of kidnappers and all of those, you see people that say, oh, they have right, they have been neglected. Some people will say, oh, these are predominantly Christian, they are predominantly Muslim. They said, oh, they are from the north, they are our people, we talk to them. Abroad, when you are a criminal, whether you are local or foreigners, the only word for you is criminal. Criminality has a way of is to be treated. But in Nigeria, we are not doing that. A criminal still have a lot of privileges. We say this criminal is a Christian criminal, is a Muslim criminal. This criminal is a Yoruba criminal, is an Hausa criminal, or is a Igbo criminal. So we cannot treat this criminal like other criminal because it's Fulani criminal. Until we remove sentiment and say criminals must be dealt with. And whosoever becomes the president, out of the 3 or 4 or 5 major candidates that we have, if the person is not communicating in clear terms, how is going to handle security challenge? Because security and economy, they are twins that cannot be separated.
Paul, here we are with insecurity of lives on one hand, and it looks like to many Nigerians, as we're having this conversation here, they're getting a bit more concerned about they're still alive, they haven't been kidnapped yet, so they need food, they need nutrition for their children. So the question is, insecurity of lives on one hand and insecurity of food on the other hand, with the kind of flooding and climate change we're seeing. Look at what's happening in the Lokoja River and all of you down. Look, all of that. How do we resolve these twin problems right now? Do you just think insecurity of life is still the most important thing we need to fix?
We have to solve the problems together. So you need somebody who will come and perform economic surgical operation that want to separate twins. It's not going to be one that wants to say, I'm a general, I'm a military, I'm going to solve the problem. When people are hungry, they will go back and carry guns. If you want to solve only economic problem and you have not solved security, if you build rail, bandits will come and blow it off. So we need one person, or we need a team, not one person, I beg your pardon. We need a team that can solve both economic and security concerns together. One, our people must eat because we have huge population. The second largest growth rate in the world after Saudi Arabia.
Because the number of the criminal elements are not as many as those of us who are not. I am not.
I am not a criminal, but in international contest,
yes.
When they look at us, what comes to mind? When we talk about football, whose name comes to mind? When Nigerian name is mentioned across the globe, what comes to the mind of people? It is not just what we say, it is the way the world sees us. So we need food, but how will food come when the farms are not secured? How will food come when water pours from the sky and it blocks one of the most significant highways in our country? Lokoja, that connects the south with the north. And people have to use our highway via boats. The highway is road system, but we have to change it to waterways. Overnight, trailers, you see, the scarcity in the north now of fuel.
Natural disasters will always happen as per climate change. These are key issues for the next CEO. And he's going to inherit this budget, technically speaking, 6 months into new administration.
Yes, that's what he will inherit, and that's why I think some of the candidates should also be speaking to this budget. That, Mr. President, you've done a good job, but please don't give this to us. Make amends here so that we can get to the next level together.
We have to go now on this. Thank you so much. Are you hopeful?
Very hopeful. I can't lose hope. I'm very hopeful that Nigeria will be great, and I'm hoping that the presidential candidates, gubernatorial candidates will communicate hope to us and do the needful. Hope without faith. Faith is anchored on your decision. We are not just blind faith and say we are hopeful or have faith, but what would you do? That is the anchor of our faith.
We're going to have this conversation again. Thank you so much for your time. It's an holiday evening.
Thank you so very much.
We appreciate your insight and perspectives on these issues. Have a great evening. Paul Alaje, Senior Economist at SPM Professionals.